and welcome to the new session. Our new speaker is Chris Walker. I believe you know him very well. He's running one of the most respected B2B marketing agencies in the United States called Refine Labs. And Chris is giving his third talk at our full funnel summit. So we connected the first time in 2020. And every time we chatted about different topics, it was all about revenue metrics. Then we spoke about dark social. And today, the new topic we are going to cover with Chris is all about that. There has never been a better time to be a B2B marketer. Before we'll dive in, guys, as always, you have Q&A section where you can drop your questions and we'll make sure that we'll cover all of your questions. But I'm really curious, before we'll start, can you drop where you are all coming from? I'm curious if we have more folks from North America now. In the previous sessions, we had mostly people from Europe, or let's say Europe dominated, right? So I'm curious to see if we have more people from North America now. Drop where you are all coming from.
Yeah, let us know if you're seeing us, if you're hearing us well.
Natalie, first time I see Chris Walker live. Cool. So that's a good chance to ask your questions today. Cool. We have Mexico, United States, Spain, Canada, Argentina, Belgium, Taiwan, Ohio, Mexico, Barcelona, Chicago. Cool. Ireland, Kenya, Bilbao, South Africa. So again, we have a fantastic international audience. Again, guys, thanks a lot for coming. Don't hesitate to ask your questions in the Q&A section. We'll make sure that all your questions will be covered. And Chris, thanks a lot again for joining us. I believe that we all can learn from you today.
Andre, thanks for having me. Hey, everyone. Really happy to be here. I think this is the third year that we've done this, which is crazy. So really excited to be back. Thank you all for the work that you do to put on this event. It's something that I look forward to, and maybe someday we'll do it in person. Would love to come over there and do that there. Awesome. So getting into this, for those of you that don't know me, my name's Chris Walker. I'm the CEO of a company called Refine Labs. We help more than 50 B2B SaaS organizations with their go-to-market programs using a proprietary growth framework that we call PIPE. And through the execution and scale that we have as a company now, and from my seat, have a very broad view of Salesforce data for more than 50 companies, where revenue comes from, whether that's coming from outbound, ABM, through their website, through lead gen programs, through all those things. So I get to see where are the results coming from. I get to see where are they struggling with. What are they struggling with, right? A lot of companies at the moment are struggling a lot with attribution. They're struggling a lot with hiring top talent. They're struggling a lot with aligning their marketing team to their sales outcomes because they still score their marketing team on old, antiquated metrics that don't help their sales team win. They're struggling with prioritization of programs. They're struggling with innovating in new channels, like new, it's hard to say for me, but for them, new channels like a LinkedIn or a podcast, or if we go really crazy, a TikTok, right? Those are some of the things that I see companies struggling with. I get to see what are all the things that they're working on? How are they prioritizing their projects? A lot of that is built around how can we implement new technology? I get to see what technology they're using, how much they pay for it, what the adoption level is, how they use it compared to how they're being directed by the vendors to use it. All of those different insights. I get to see how budget gets allocated. So out of marketing budgets, high growth companies, $20 to $30 million a year marketing budgets, how's that getting broken up? How do they divide that? Even like a smaller company, like a Series A, $2 to $5 million marketing budget, how's that getting split up between headcount, paid media, content programs, consultants, any other things? So I go through saying that because I believe that the view that I have on the market is incredibly unique. It actually might be, it might be the most unique out there at this point, just because of the sheer scale compared with what I'm doing on the internet and what I'm doing in person together. Just creates a massive amount of insights about what's happening in the market. And I'm looking forward to sharing some of those with you today. What I am super passionate about sharing today, And I've felt this as a marketer since 2017. And basically, while everything else was pushing, like the company that I worked for was pushing me of, hey, like, do you still want to do marketing? We got this sales territory open. You want to go be a seller? People literally said that to me in 2017. And I could just see the way the world was moving. And I was like, this company, the CEO of this company doesn't see it right now in 2017, but damn, they're going to be looking for marketers like me in 5 years. It's going to take them a little bit to figure out that they need the skills that I bring that they don't see right now. And boy, are we here. It's been progressively happening since 2017 to now, but it just keeps getting better every day. And the topic is that there's never been a better time to be a B2B marketer than right now. So many forces in the market that are pushing this to happen. And I'm going to take people back because we can't do a show of hands. I'd love if the audience, but maybe we can do like a poll or something. I'll just ask the question rhetorically is how many people were a B2B marketer in 2015, right? So like kind of theoretically raise your hand if we talk through that. And I'm going to talk through because I was there, what was going on in 2015. It was really difficult to do market research and access customers. Didn't have communities or social networks or things like that. The sales team didn't want us to talk to their customers because they thought that they had to own the relationship. Those things were going on. Another piece is that there was no contact databases. So sales didn't have like a Zoom Info or a Cognism or something like that where they could go in and be like, okay, I want to get all these C-level executives from these accounts so I can do my prospecting. They didn't have those tools. So marketing had to do that. So instead of like now that there's an automated tool that your sales team could use so that marketing doesn't have to do any of that, that frees marketing to do so many better things now. You basically had to wait like for a couple times a year where you could build your big trade show booth for the one couple of times where marketing could directly access customers, where you would go to the booth, where you could do market research, where you could set things up, where you hope people would come by. And you would do that a couple times a year. The last one is that you would use what I call middlemen, a trade publication, a conference, the sales team, or some other level of a channel partner or something like that. Marketing works through a middleman to access the customer. And here we are in 2022, where all of those rules are gone. We have social networks everywhere where B2B buyers know how to use 50, 60-year-old C-level executives all the way down, active on these platforms, consuming content, engaging, learning, building like connections and networks, setting business priorities, those types of things. There are communities that are built either inside of the social networks or in other platforms that aggregate professionals around a specific topic or subject matter that they all get together where you can go in there and learn what people are talking about. There is on LinkedIn or any other platform, perfect targeting of I want to target C-level executives at companies of this size with this industry SISC code or anything else. You can go in and perfectly target who you want as a marketer. You don't need to go out and buy data. You don't need your sales team to help you do it. You don't need anything. You can go and get those things done on your own, which is incredibly empowering because now instead of working through middlemen like we used to have to as marketers, I did it too, right? How we used to have to work through middlemen to access customers. Now we have direct access to customers in like a direct to consumer model, which allows us to run streams of communication to our customers in parallel with everything that sales is doing. So it's not like a marketing does X and then sales takes over and does Y. Marketing's continuously doing this whilst in coordination with sales running all of their plays, which gives marketing just such a more impactful, empowering, and important role in a B2B go-to-market strategy than 5 years ago. And the best things that are happening right now, the forces that I've seen in the last 12 months, is that chief revenue officers, VPs of sales, like these types of people are now coming to my company. I'm sure they're doing it with other companies too. We need to we have a go-to-market strategy issue. We need to fix marketing. And the whole route, I've been saying this for literally 4 years. that the whole root of go-to-market strategy issues is that the company has their marketing team doing sales instead of their marketing team doing marketing. And the whole way to unlock unlock the issues in your go-to-market strategy and get into the right space is to free your marketing team to allow them to do marketing, real marketing that helps customers win. So those are some of the forces that I'm seeing. The other like sort of symptoms isn't the right word, but other things that are happening because of this. The job market for marketers is really, really hot. When the job market is really hot, this is more on the candidate side. You have the ability to be very selective about the company that you work for and what the terms of how you work for them are. So maybe 5 years ago as a marketer, you didn't have a lot of options. You had, like, I didn't, right? You had to take the job that you can get. Now as a marketer with the supply and demand, if you're really good, you call the shots. Who am I going to work for? Why am I working for them? What are the terms of how I work for them? Maybe I could do it as a consultant. Do I need to be a full-time employee in order to do that? It creates massive flexibility for the candidate, the employee, to set themselves up in an environment where they're going to be truly successful. And I think that it's just incredibly empowering to be in this seat, because I've been watching this for a long time and it hasn't been like this. It hasn't always been like this. And I think that this puts a place where marketers are really in the driver's seat. And there's going to be a lot of career changing things that happen. They've already happened, right? From 2019 forward, it's happening for a lot of people, but it's accelerating. So if you want to be one of those people where over a 1 to 3 year period of time, you sort of like make a commitment and get things to move, and you change the trajectory of your career and or perhaps your life, like this is the opportunity to do it. And so I think there's so much opportunity. I think there's so many things that marketers could do if they could break free from sort of like the box that a lot of companies and even marketers themselves put themselves in about what does marketing do today and why. And I think if you challenge that, you'd end up with a lot of opportunities to try new things. And so this was a quick chat to hopefully inspire some people to potentially think about whether they're in the right company right now. Think about whether they're in the right role. Maybe you're in an SDR role and you want to move into marketing. Maybe there's a lot of different situations for people, but the key that what I see is that there's just an undeniable movement in the market that is a force pulling marketers up, and really hoping that you could be a part of it too. Thank you.
Thank you. Basically, I know I saw this question coming from Andrea, and I believe that so many B2B marketers are facing this issue. I remember when I joined Kimberly-Clark and I started my career in sales, and then after 5 years in sales, I switched to marketing. And I was wondering why we're not doing demand gen activities. I suggested, micro events for our key customers. And all the time I received a question from my VP. He was like, but how are we going to generate leads? And but look, that's completely different story. So we're going to do this to create awareness and basically connect with our key customers. We can print, basically we were selling to core retail chains. And I thought we can print VP of logistics, we can print VP of purchasing department, and connect with these people because we have no connections. And all the time I got the question, but are you going to sell them on these events? And this is exactly the question that Andrea is asking right now. How do you recommend to convince new VP of marketing to change the mindset from lead gen to demand gen?
My position on this has changed quite a bit as of recently, because I think that your number one ally in this conversation is actually the head of sales now. And so what I recommend that companies do, the most clear-cut way to do this is you need to change the goal. And so when you frame up the goal of how many leads do we get, the lead gen model is going to win for sure. When you frame it up of how much pipeline do we create so our sales team wins more of that pipeline, we score it at win rates of greater than 25%, then you see what's actually going on. And so what I would do is I would get with the head of sales. I would say, hey, what I've done is I've looked back at our business data over the past 18 months. Here's what I'm seeing in the data. What I'm seeing is that we drive all of these MQLs through these specific channels. They either get passed directly to your SDR team, or they go through some market automation and then get an MQL score and then go to your SDR team. In either of those streams, here's what the data looks like from there. It takes us, 180 calls to get one meeting. And then out of the meetings that we get 10% of them actually move into a qualified opportunity, and then our A's win them at 10%. So we got to have 780 conversations to win one opportunity through this method. And it's really inefficient. And I believe that there's a better way that our teams could operate. The first thing that we could do is we could think about, does marketing really need to create MQLs anymore? What is the point of that? The point of that is so that we have an email address or a phone number so that the sales team can go and do something with it. Don't you think at this point we could use Zoom info? We could get intent data. There's other obvious triggers to trigger outbound sales than marketing creating MQLs. Worked perfectly in 2014 when there was no contact databases, there was no intent data. The level of automation in sales was very low. You had to create MQLs in 2014. It's 8 years later. Here's what's actually happening in the landscape now. Here are the things that have changed. Here's why revenue operations should own the triggering of outbound sales now, not marketing. And then once we do that, because the data is showing us that this is super low productivity and here's a clear option that would work the same, if not better. And then when we stop doing that, here are all the things that marketing could do instead to drive buyers that actually want to buy, to improve the effectiveness of our outbound messages because people understand the brand and like us, to drive more inbound buyers to say, hey, I want to buy now, that close super fast, to communicate our narrative into the market so that when we're inside of meetings, we're not educating people on this basic stuff. They already know all the basic stuff, so our sales team can help them buy. Our win rates go up. Our sales cycles go down. Our sales velocity gets better. Our business gets better. And so that I would personally have that conversation with the head of sales.
Yeah, I love the answer. There was an interesting question that I would like to share here. And I think whether we are predicting, or even I would ask the same question about 2022. So today, what do you think are let's say the most important skills, that most attractive, desired skills that marketers should have, maybe also in the future? And perhaps also, how can people get those skills?
So for today?
Yeah, and if you feel like predicting future as well, we'll
talk about present day. So for the present day, some top 3 skills for marketers. I think number 1 is being able to generate customer insights on your own. Primary market research with customers. When I say customers, it could be people that pay you right now or potential people that don't pay you but could in the future. The overall market, being able to source insights, which are typically qualitative insights, which then drive everything after that. Marketers fly blind because they don't get the insights. So what they're doing after that is they're just guessing, right? So we got to have a way to get insights straight away. Number 2, you need to understand your business's data better than anyone else in the company, better than your RevOps team. I go into companies that are 100 million ARR, and because of the way that I look at it, I understand their Salesforce data better than anyone else in their company, because everyone else looks at it in one specific way because that's what they're looking at. And through the insights that I've gleaned through what I mentioned at the beginning, just through the sheer scale of how we operate, I look at the stuff a different way. But really being able to, like the question before that came up, like getting into the data and being able to present in a compelling way to your VP of sales, here is what's happening in the data. Do you think this is working or not? Should we consider trying something new? Being able to have that business level conversation, I think, is super important, which leads me to number 3. Marketers need to grow from being a marketer to being a business person that executes marketing. And it's a huge secret weapon, because when you think like a business person first that does marketing, you think differently. How's this going to impact customer success? How is this going to impact our sales team? How can I feed these insights back into product? What are we going to do to improve our margins? How are we going to be able to increase pricing over time, right? You start to look at the business much more holistically, which is, I think, probably one of the biggest shortcomings of marketing right now, and why you don't see as many CMOs become CEOs as could be, because they're marketers first and business people second. And if you flip that and you become a business person first that does marketing, I think that you'd get a lot better results. So customer insights, understanding business data and being able to slice and dice that deeply. And what was the last one?
Business first,
and
second.
and then developing a deep level of business acumen.
Actually, there was a comment by Andrea regarding the former question. So she mentioned that she actually brought her VP of sales to watch your last year's session at our full funnel summit. So he's on board, which is good.
Yeah, it's crazy. Back to that last question too, to go a little bit further. None of my answers involved anything tactical, right? It wasn't like who be the best at developing a podcast. It wasn't about understanding the dynamics of how to use TikTok. It's marketers are smart enough to figure out those things. What's missing is the top level about why we do them. And so by starting with the customer and working down to why, it makes the tactics easy. It makes producing a podcast easy, or posting content on LinkedIn, because the content that you're posting, you have insights into the audience. You understand how it relates to the business. You understand how to measure it. So I just wanted to take that a little bit further for people, because I think people get so caught up in the, how do we like use this intent data to run ads or things like that. And it's just such a, it's so misguided, because to actually execute marketing well, the only thing that matters is do you do the fundamentals well? And through the execution of strong fundamentals, everything else follows.
Absolutely. I remember like you posted on LinkedIn about YouTube, basically how you tracked if you are getting traction from YouTube, and if people are reaching out and saying, hey, so I listened to your podcast, or I just watched your keynote, etc. And then I decided to reach out to Refine Labs. And it means that channel is now generating traction, right? So it totally makes sense to double down despite of the numbers you can see in the Google Analytics. They can say whatever they are saying, but the truth is that these folks are listening to you and coming back.
I haven't logged into Google Analytics in more than a year, and I might go as far to say is that aside from like general level traffic metrics, like is our direct and organic traffic going down or up, that tool is borderline useless.
We even don't have account for fullfunnel.io.
Yeah.
I have zero idea. To be
Doesn't
honest,
matter.
all I know that when we have the field the same, like you mentioned, we have this field, how did you hear about us? And that's enough to understand how these folks are buying.
And
so
the big switch is how you prioritize data. So for whatever reason, business professionals, not just marketers, business professionals have been trained to think that quantitative data is the way to make decisions. And then we have people that are posting saying like gut feel is where your best decisions come from. It's not gut feel. It's that you've collected a lot of qualitative information that you can't explain in a chart that then drives your decisions. So when people say that gut feel makes the best decisions, what they're really saying is that qualitative insights drive the best decisions. And it's so true. The reason that my company moves faster, the reason that we don't miss a lot of the time, all the reasons that have made us successful is because we use qualitative insights where we see things way sooner. We get them directly from customers so that we feel that they're right. We collect them at scale. We collect them in places where other companies that are like ours don't even look. And then from there, once we have those insights, we have 3 or more years to go out and execute against those insights before anyone else figures out what we're doing. And it's just, it's so crazy because other companies are going to wait for a report from Gartner that says, now's the time to start your podcast. And that report will come out in like 2024. And you could have had a solid 5 years executing a podcast before you waited for some quantitative data to do it. And so, yeah, I couldn't push people harder. It's literally the most important thing in marketing right now is figuring out how to harness qualitative insights and being in a company that allows you to do it, that prioritizes it too. So trying to find a match between the leadership in your company and how they see the world. Are they customer centric? How do they think about metrics? Where do they think the world is going? Where do they think the world is right now? And does that align with how you see it as a marketer? There's not a better position to be in than to be in a place where you have alignment across those things, because it just makes your job so much smoother. You innovate faster, you learn faster, you just get more done.
We have lots of questions from our community. Let me share what we have. So what's your take on product qualified leads?
I'll produce a little bit of a hot take here that I think should be funny. So before like a product led motion came out, what were we doing? Right. So we used gated content, and then we collected people, leads, and then we did some things to them, marketing automation, which then produced a score that created an MQL. So then our sales team called people that didn't ask for us to, that didn't want us to call them, that didn't ask for us to call them. And how does a PQL work in practice? We try and drive someone to sign up for our free trial form. They become not a PQL, but like a sign up. We do certain things to them, send them automated emails, give them in-product notifications, run other ads to them and things like that to try and move them to become a PQL. And then what do we do when they're a PQL? We have our sales team call them when they didn't ask for us to call them. And so it's so crazy. If you actually look, the two motions, whether you're using a gated ebook or the product, are exactly the same. I will not argue that I think that the product motion is a better motion, but it doesn't change the fact that it's basically the same. It's still an assembly line. It still has different teams responsible for different parts of it. I feel like it's very disjointed, and it all roads lead to our sales team calling people that didn't ask for us to call them. So that's the hot take. I think that the future of where this can go is incredibly strong. I think that this is the fact that sales-led companies, and when I say sales-led, I mean companies that execute an enterprise sales motion primarily and don't have an in-product or way for the people to get into the product on their own, that these companies have been so selfish in how they think about their own selling process that they completely discount the buyer experience, which is creating major opportunities for any company that can get this right on the product-led side. So if you're in a category where it's a bunch of enterprise-level companies that only sell through a sales motion, they're like big $100 million companies, the revenue actually doesn't matter, that they're slow and selfish, that if you created it, you can create a massive competitive advantage just by letting people get into the product and do those things. And I think it's just, what I'm pushing product-led companies to do a little bit more is that it's not all about getting someone into the product, especially when you're trying to sell a enterprise level sale. If you want to get people into your product so they can pay $7 a month and you want to run performance marketing to do that, then great, you can do that. But it's a lot different to do that than to get Amazon to have 1,000 users in your product and pay you 7 figures a year. And the difference between those two things is that the short-term performance marketing doesn't work so well when you're trying to get 1,000 users in Amazon. What works to do product-led in an enterprise motion is that you need the enterprise to prioritize the business problem that you solve across their business. And what does that require? It doesn't require you getting 2 or 3 managers into the product. It requires you to teach the executives in the company why they should consider using your tool and how other companies of their size use it to be successful. It frames it back. It just gets you out. I think that even in product-led, it's still very much so in lead gen mode, even though the lead gen motion is now a free trial sign up. And what we need to get into in both cases, PLG or sales-led, we need to do more demand gen, right? So it's the exact same nuances about what happens in product-led exist in the sales-led motion. And if you look at how companies spend budget for product-led, it's all quote unquote lead gen performance marketing to get free trial signups. I think that they should reallocate their budget and think differently to focus a lot more on generating demand.
Thank you. Let me switch the question. We have one more from Ibrahim, and I see this is the top voted question so far. So if you are on a 3-person marketing team versus 20 plus sales team, how do you communicate marketing value and align both sales and marketing?
Yeah, and at the end of the question, it's I've known you call this the marketing death wish. I just want to clarify on what the marketing death wish means for people. The marketing death wish is when you join typically a Series A company that recently raised their Series A. They've already hired somewhere between 6 and 15 salespeople and SDRs, and they haven't hired a single marketer. And so they went out and hired all these salespeople. They start running outbound. And then what happens is the leader of the sales team, who's typically inexperienced and hasn't run a sales team before, but just hired all these people because they have money, then says, because our outbound sales motion isn't working as much as we need to, and I'm not hitting my targets, now we need to go find a growth marketer. And then they open one job rec, not for a VP of marketing, not for a product marketer or a strategist. They open one job rec for a growth marketer that they plan on paying $100 to $125K a year. And then the growth marketer comes in, and all they do is they just run the MQL hamster wheel, which doesn't help anything. It doesn't help the sales team win, it doesn't help the SDRs, it doesn't help you as your career, it doesn't help the company. And then once you do that and it doesn't work, then they end up laying off the marketing team and they have to go back. So they start over. That's the marketing death wish, because you basically go in there, you're like, oh, I'm the first marketer in the company. I'm going to be able to build out they sell you on the dream of building out your team and different things like that. The second you get in there, what happens? All you do is you're just on the MQL hamster wheel doing shit that doesn't work. So if you're on a 3-person marketing team versus a 20-person sales team, which is a bit of a different situation here. And the question is more on how do you communicate the value of marketing? To me, I think the most obvious way to communicate the value of marketing is built around how much revenue and pipeline gets generated through our website. This is how I was doing it when I was working at a company called Vapotherm in 2017. If you exclude the product marketing team, then our demand gen team was 3 people. And if you include the CSMs in with the sales team, then our field team, our commercial team, was about 120 people. 3-person demand gen team, 50-person sales team, 120-person field team. So this isn't that much different than what I was doing there. And then when you stack it up and you look and you're like, okay, so we have a 3-person demand gen team and a 50-person sales team, but 40% of our net new revenue comes through our website. So when you look at it, we're spending $30 million a year on sales. We spend $1.5 million a year on demand gen. But most of the revenue coming through gets sourced through our website, where it's like, hey, here you go, salesperson. You're going to win these at a super high rate. Our sales cycles are way shorter. Why are we spending all this money to create pipeline that doesn't close and go and have meetings that we never win? So if the goal is to communicate the value of marketing, I think it's the most clean cut. If you do anything else, if you score on a leading metric like MQL, SQL, poor definition of pipeline, influenced revenue, which is my least favorite of all of these, you do any of those, you will always have questions about, is marketing truly driving revenue? Go ahead and put your influenced revenue report together and then go and ask and say, hey, can we grow my budget from 3 million to 8 million next year? We influenced $4 million in revenue last year, and watch what happens in the executive room. Listen to what people ask you. Listen to what people say and how they react. Your budget request will definitely be denied. You go back in there in a different situation, in a different light, and you go, okay, we spent $3 million a year on marketing last year, and we generated $5.5 million in revenue through our website. Now, what I want to do is I want to try and grow that $5.5 million in revenue to $11 million in revenue next year. What I'm going to need to do that is we're going to need the budget to move from 3 million to 7.5. It's going to be an increase. We're going to get the increase in results. And here's how we're going to do it now that we have things proven out. It's just a completely different conversation, because when you're doing this through the website, it's like it's not the accounts that sales is working that are coming inbound. It's accounts that sales is not working. And so I think that you get a different level of respect, the executive level, and just across the company when you drive revenue through your website, not take credit for revenue that the sales team closes.
Love it. There is you spoke about the 3 most important skills. The first one being able to source customer information, and we have a most loaded question is about how do you do this practically? Is there any structure one can follow to get started? Just helping people understand how to get into that in a very practical way.
Yeah, so there's a ton of different ways to do this. I'll try and break it down to some things that are simple steps. The first step that I would do is I would assess your business data. So I would go in and I would look, here are all our customers. If you're in a recurring revenue model business, I would stack them by either product usage, retention rates, or different things like that. Who are the companies that pay us the most, that are the happiest, that use the product the best, that stay with us the longest? And I would start to sort that, and I would look at who are the companies that are at the top, who are the companies that are at the bottom, and then I would start to make hypotheses as to why is it like this, right? So for some companies, it might be like all the companies at the bottom, it makes sense because they don't sell through a distributor, or it looks like it's like this because they all fit into this group. There's going to be some trends or things that you see that at this point is only going to be firmographic data. They work in this industry. They have this much revenue, right? Like easy to access firmographic data is where you'll be able to slice it initially. And then you go out and you talk to people in both of the groups. And when you talk to people in both of the groups, you can ask pretty open-ended, curious questions. How are you using the product right now? What do you consider the value to get out of it? What would happen if you didn't have this? What would you use instead, right? So you can think about what are the question tracks, but at this point, I would be focused on how is the product being used. And then when the bottom group of customers says, I don't really find value in the product, or I'm not using it that much, or different things like that, you can say, why? The number one thing that you don't get as a marketer right now, because all you look at is quantitative data, is you don't get the why. And the why is everything. And so we need to be able to say, why are you not using the product this way? Why is it not working for your patients? Why is it not working for your business? And then at the same time, you could almost do the exact same question track to the top, the best customers. And when you ask why, you're going to get very different answers up there. And then you're going to be able to say, oh, this makes a lot of sense. We thought that our best customers were our best customers because they had more than 1,000 employees. But the real reason they're our best customers is because of this thing. There's no data around that. It's maybe how they think. It's maybe something in their business that's hard to understand. But this is why they really use our product. That's the initial insight as to how I would go through and segment customers. Then you can go and do the same exercise for people that don't pay you right now and validate those insights. Okay, we got our best customers up here. They say that this is why they use our product. Let's go see if other companies like them also say that they have this issue, right? So this is a very focused on customer segmentation, identifying who are the segments to actually sell to. Once you're beyond that, I love a couple of actionable ways to do this. Number one, easiest way is to start a podcast and interview people. For sure. Start a podcast. Look at who do your customers listen to? Where do your customers get information? Who do they engage with on social? Who are the people that they're seeing when they go to the trade show conference? What sessions do they go to, and who is presenting the sessions? And then have those people be on your podcast first. You get, these are the experts that my buyers listen to. I'm going to have them on the podcast. You get a little bit of promotion, but honestly, it's just to prime your knowledge. So what are these people saying, and how does that align with my company's perspective? And then at some point, I'm actually going to go out and interview potential customers or current customers, and I'm going to do the exact same thing on a podcast. I love this motion because once it's on the podcast, it serves as a way to get it out to the rest of the company. So once you've done these interviews, then you can say, like, hey, sales team, I know that you're going to be traveling 4 hours on the plane to go to that big meeting with a customer. While you're on the way there, you might want to listen to this 30-minute podcast I just did with X, Y, and Z with a customer that you're visiting really respects about this topic. It just, because the podcast can be distributed, it can be treated as sales enablement. It can get the company aligned on what's happening. And it can basically scale customer research. I love that play. And then the next level down or up, I'm not sure, the next level would be to be active inside of the social networks and communities where your buyers hang out, which requires like I like doing the podcast first because you develop what do these people like? What questions are they asking? Where do they hang out? Who are they listening to? And then you can go into the communities with more of an educated understanding about how to play within it. So that would be my recommendation. And then once you get to a certain point, like for me right now, the way that I get customer insights is that I do a ton of events like this, third-party ones like what we're doing right now, or first-party ones where we host events and hundreds of marketers show up. I get insights on all the questions. I then post content on a bunch of different platforms so that I can listen to what people say, right? So most people think that posting content is about pushing out information, but I push out my perspective so that I can hear what people say back, which is insights at scale. I get the comments and different things like that. I also do one-on-one level conversations with our best customers, with customers that are struggling, with companies that are not our customer right now. So I just the goal is to have, you don't need to think about doing market research. You don't need to think about getting insights because the insights are just everywhere. They're always around you and happening because you put yourself in the right scenarios to get them all the time.
Thank you. Personally, I think it's brilliant because that's the way how you can get actionable insights you can use to refine your marketing and sales as well. We have 12 minutes left. And guys, before we'll cover other questions, let me ask you a question. Did you like the session? Did you learn something new? Just share your feedback in a chat. Curious to hear your feedback. And the next question is coming from Kelly. How do you see the intersect between marketers and comms and PR teams in your model?
They're sort of one and the same. It's the level of silos and segmentation in marketing and every other function in business, I think, has gone too far. And I think that through the silos, it creates boxes that marketers need to play in, and it makes it very harder, makes it way more difficult to create integrated campaigns that make sense across a lot of different channels. The value in what you're doing as a marketer is when you do a live event, like the one we're doing right now, you record the content, you then put it on a podcast, distribute it on social, have somebody come in as like a PR person and write an article about the topic that you were talking on, and have all of that stuff happening at once. And so it's when you bridge different functions of marketing is when things really happen. And then you use paid, right? Then you use paid on top of it to distribute the information, whether that's the PR article, whether that's the video content that you created, whether that's a blog you wrote about the content. And it just keeps working like that. So I think we need to be way more focused on the integration of different marketing functions. Like, I don't think about myself as a demand gen marketer. I don't think about myself as a product marketer. I don't think about myself as a PR person. I think about myself as a marketer and a business person. And I can flex. And when I need to do product marketing, I do it. When I need to do demand gen, I do it. When I need to do brand, I do it. And oftentimes I'm doing all of them at the same time. And I just don't think about them as in little buckets. So I don't think about doing differently. I just think about it as doing marketing. It's a huge, the T-shaped marketer was a huge lie for marketers. Maybe it was right at the time. Maybe it was right to be specialized and be really good at SEO and then okay at everything else 5 years ago. But it's a lie right now. The best marketers are holistic marketers that can do all functions and operate like a business person. So I would not look at them as an intersection of people. I would think about them as how do they intersect about two things that I'm doing. Maybe that wasn't clear. I'm having trouble explaining it. when the different functions, how you cross them over as one marketer, right? So it's not we have marketers and we have comms and PR people. It's we have marketers, and how do we span the different specializations of marketing as a collective?
All right. We have an interesting question I found about scaling. So I don't know exactly what Janvi means by scaling, but let's say that you have, I assume, let's say, reached market product fit or have reached some sort of a milestone. You want to go from whatever 2 to 10 million. You want to go from 10 to 100. So like, how do you get to that next level would be my interpretation. So what you should be focusing on as a marketer to scale.
I'll break this down into a 6-step framework, and I'll tell you where most marketers go wrong. And so like the revenue value of where you're at is an indicator, but it's not the trigger to scale marketing programs. The first thing that you need to do is you need to collect customer insights, which then drive experiments. So I'm talking about scaling marketing right now, not scaling a company. And so you need to be able to collect customer insights, and people are like, okay, like I'm getting information on LinkedIn. I like listening to Dave Gerhardt. I listen to these podcasts twice a week, whatever the insights are, which then decide what experiments am I going to run. And then once you have experiments active in a couple of different channels, right, you're going to be doing things, and you're going to be looking for what are the positive signals that I get out of it. Positive signals for me initially. CMOs were commenting on my posts. People were sending me DMs on LinkedIn saying, hey, could you come talk about this with my team at my company? Would you come and speak on our live event? Would you be on my podcast? Those are signals that, hey, I'm putting information out. People are receiving it, and it's working so much they want me to go and speak at their company. You need to get to the level of I'm getting positive signals, because it's always the first signal. It's not like you're going to get revenue out of the gate. The engagement of what people are saying qualitatively is so important. Once you do that, you got to figure out, can I make this repeatable? If I keep doing it, do I get similar results out? Right? So for me, people are asking me to be on the podcast. People are asking me to speak at their company. And then I'm like, okay, so if I post on LinkedIn 3 times a week, does this stuff keep happening for me? It does. Okay. I have a level of repeatability here. Now I need to figure out, how am I going to operationalize it? How am I going to be able to go from 3 posts a week to 1 a day? For instance, how am I going to be able to go from doing 1 event a month to doing 4 events a month? How am I going to operationalize this with technology, automation, resources, things like that, to actually put it together so that we can do it repeatably and scale it? And then you scale. So, but most people don't take the first 5 steps. They're just like, oh, we got Google ads, and then we're just going to hit a button and scale out, right? And that's the setup of effective scale is the first 5 steps that I've done that most marketers overlook, because it's not like what you see in like the B2C conferences where you go and you like push a button on Facebook ads and then the revenue chart just goes up and to the right. That's just literally not how it works. It doesn't work like that in B2B, and it most often doesn't work like that in B2C either. And so being able to work through a process where for like 3 to 6 months, you're setting up for scale. You're figuring out, okay, like I'm setting up for scale for TikTok right now, right? I have positive signals where at the moment we have 2 or 3 people that are saying, I learned about you from your CEO's content on TikTok, that are now asking to work with us. It's a positive signal, but it doesn't mean that we know exactly what's going to work. It doesn't mean that it's absolutely repeatable. It doesn't mean that we have the resources to do that 5 times a day. So all of these different steps need to be taken, which takes time and discipline to be ready to scale. And so a ton of marketing money and a ton of marketing effort gets wasted by trying to scale things that should have never been scaled in the first place.
I love it. Great framework. I just have to apologize. Need to welcome our next speaker, Peplaya, and really sorry I have to go, but thank you so much.
Yeah, so I believe we have 4 minutes left. Let's cover the last question. And I'm sorry, guys. I believe you got lots of value from this session. So we won't be able to cover everything, but let's cover this last one about the metrics. So my question is coming from Christian. My question is around how to measure inbound alongside outbound ABM. So we know how to measure the inbound funnel from MQL, the closed form, but how does that look like when trying to measure outbound and ABM as a funnel in parallel with inbound?
So I'll be honest, this is something that I'm thinking about and working on. I can speak through some of the companies that I've seen that I think do this better than I've seen others do it, and I can share that on that. But to be direct, I don't have a framework or a direct opinion on this at the moment. What I think about the quote unquote like funnels you alluded to in your question, I look at them as very separate and distinct things, which is that like it's a different motion when a qualified buyer says, hey, I want to buy your stuff now. Can I talk to your sales rep? Versus when you're going and calling someone and saying, hey, do you want to have a meeting with us? We might be able to help you. And it's a different motion. You should most likely have a different sales process. You might want to consider having different sales resources do it. Your marketing strategy around it is different. The data that you use, the win rates that you have, the ACVs, the sales cycle lengths, all of the things are going to be very different between those two things, which is why I recommend looking at them as two distinct paths. So on the quote unquote inbound side, we're working on a framework that basically I'm hopeful will displace the MQL, that once rolled out and adopted, that companies won't use the MQL at all anymore. I think that's my hope, is that it's gone, because I just think it's a useless metric at this point for how everything works. On the outbound side, the thing that I would start, when you're at ABM outbound, you can look at this in like two specific ways. You're like, what is the trigger? One of the triggers could be that we're looking at like some level of intent data. The intent data hits like some account score, and then we're going to go and try and like work those accounts. Or we have a set of accounts, whatever, 100 accounts that we're going to work no matter what, regardless of the level of intent. Those are sort of like the two main ways that I see it. On the intent side, you can say, okay, here are all the accounts that we could go after that fit our ICP, and then here are the amount that are in a level of intent. And then you could look at from there, what does the funnel look like all the way down? Instead of using an MQL, you use like some account engagement score as the first level of a point, and then you work down into a quote unquote funnel. That's what most people will do right now. I would start to measure the success a little bit deeper than that. And then because I would look at success deeper than that, because I think that the intent algorithms are flawed. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think that they are not a good, if you look at it under the hood of how the technology was built, it's basically glorified retargeting. So like once an account hits your website, all of a sudden they're in market, right? It's glorified retargeting with some other stuff put on top of it. And I just don't think the data is that helpful or relevant. I think that it can be an interesting signal to use, but I don't think that you should I don't think that it's accurate enough for you to like measure your entire funnel based on that. So I'd look at a level deeper down from the conversion rate from that to a qualified meeting or something like that. And then on the we have all of our accounts and we're maybe not using intent data. We're just trying to get these accounts in. You can blindly look at it at what is the success of these accounts, right? So from a marketing perspective, we got these 100 accounts that our sales team is trying to go after, our top tier strategic accounts, right? How much pipeline is being created off of that? This sort of gets into the influenced revenue conversation, which I don't like that much, because I don't think it's a strong argument for the effectiveness of marketing. But then you would use that and say, how many of the 100 accounts became into pipeline or into revenue? The challenging thing with that is understanding, did the marketing actually make an impact on that, or was it going to happen anyway? And that's a place where I think it's a little cloudy. So it's a great question, something I need to think more about, but those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, but potentially you can post something on LinkedIn later. Thank you so much. Guys, again, I'm sorry that we won't be able to cover all the questions, but again, I believe you learned a lot, and I'm really grateful for your feedback in the chat. I'm happy to hear that you loved the session and the summit so far. Chris, thanks a lot for joining us again, and I hope that later, maybe this year or next year, we will be able to host it live and bring you to Europe.
That'd be amazing. Thanks, everyone. Really, always love doing this, and I saw the comments in the chat. Great to hear that it was valuable for people. So thank you.
Thank you. See you in a moment, guys, for the next session. Cheers. Bye-bye.